An urgent crisis at the border. More than 10,000 men, women, and children flooding into Texas seeking asylum.
Thousands of migrants are flooding across the Texas border overnight. Local Texas towns are overwhelmed. Governor Abbott is scrambling to respond. What you're about to see isn't fiction, it's the reality facing Texas border communities right now.
So here we are at Eagle Pass.
I'm Tony Gonzalez. I'm the local congressman here in the district.
From unprecedented crossings to desperate government responses, this is the full story of how the migrant crisis pushed Texas to its breaking point. Texas towns under siege.
What you see behind me are individuals that have not even been processed or detained. These individuals here are actually just waiting to get detained.
The situation unfolding at the Texas-Mexico border has reached unprecedented levels, with local communities experiencing what officials are openly calling an invasion. Towns like Del Rio, Eagle Pass, El Paso, and Laredo have become ground zero for a migrant crisis that has fundamentally transformed life in these communities virtually overnight.
We felt like we should go out and declare we're being invaded.
The numbers tell a staggering story. In 2023, there were over 2.4 million encounters along the southwest border, with Texas bearing the brunt of this historic surge. At the peak of the crisis, border officials were processing over 10,000 migrants per day at some locations. In Del Rio alone, a city with a population of just 28,000 people, officials reported receiving over 19,000 migrants in roughly 10 days, a number that exceeds the city's entire population.
More than 9,000 men, women, and children have converged on that border hoping to seek asylum.
Tech entrepreneur Elon Musk visited the border to document what he described as an unfiltered view of the situation. What he found shocked even him: a chaotic scene of continuous crossings that local law enforcement simply cannot contain.
Right here under the bridge, you're seeing hundreds of people getting processed, and this is every single day.
So it's just sort of like that's the bridge, and there's like people getting processed, and then they come across on those the trains over there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an initial intake spot, and then they'll send them through, but it's nonstop all day long.
The composition of migrants crossing into Texas has shifted dramatically over the years. While historically Mexican nationals dominated border crossings, the crisis now involves migrants from around the world. Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and even countries from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East are represented in the surge. As Congressman Tony Gonzalez explained during Musk's visit, this isn't just a regional migration, it's a global phenomenon. Local sheriffs are overwhelmed. In some Texas counties the size of entire states, there are only 2 or 3 law enforcement officers trying to handle the influx. The Border Patrol agents who used to serve as the front line are now completely consumed with processing duties, leaving local law enforcement to carry the entire burden of public safety. The scale of the crisis is almost incomprehensible when you examine the raw numbers. Just in the Eagle Pass area alone, officials reported processing around 2,500 people per day. That's over 700,000 annually from a single crossing point. And these are only the migrants who are processed. The gotaways, those who evade detection entirely, could double that figure. Constitutional law experts and local officials remain divided on how to characterize the crisis. Many Texas county officials have formally declared the situation an invasion under Article 4 of the Constitution, which requires the federal government to protect states against invasion. They argue this designation should trigger additional federal assistance and resources.
It is an invasion that is being pushed by the cartels into our country, and it must come to a stop.
The human toll extends beyond statistics. Border towns are experiencing severe strain on their healthcare systems, schools, and housing infrastructure. The conditions at makeshift processing areas have been described as dire, with migrants camping under international bridges in triple-digit heat with limited access to food and water. Schools in border communities report classrooms bursting at capacity, with teachers struggling to accommodate students who speak dozens of different languages. Hospital emergency rooms have been transformed into de facto immigration processing centers, diverting resources from local residents who need medical care. The crisis has also created dangerous situations for migrants themselves. Cartels have exploited the chaos, charging migrants anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 for passage across the border. Many migrants arrive traumatized, having survived sexual assault, robbery, and violence during their journey. The Darien Gap, the treacherous jungle passage between Colombia and Panama, has claimed countless lives as migrants attempt the dangerous trek northward. Those who survive often arrive in Texas with nothing but the clothes on their backs, dependent on already overwhelmed local services for basic necessities. Abbott's aggressive response. Governor Greg Abbott has responded to the crisis with what he describes as the most aggressive state-level border security operation in American history. Launched in March 2021, Operation Lone Star has become the cornerstone of Texas's independent border enforcement strategy, deploying the Texas National Guard and Department of Public Safety to the border in unprecedented numbers. The operation has cost Texas taxpayers over $11 billion since its inception. It includes the deployment of more than 10,000 National Guard soldiers and DPS troopers along the border, installation of razor wire barriers, marine buoys in the Rio Grande, and construction of state-funded border walls. Abbott has framed these measures as necessary responses to what he considers federal government failure to secure the border. One of Abbott's most controversial tactics has been the busing program, which transports migrants from Texas to sanctuary cities across the country. Since 2022, Texas has transported over 100,000 migrants to cities including New York, Chicago, Denver, and Los Angeles. The governor has defended this program as a way to share the burden with cities that have declared themselves welcoming to migrants.
Before anybody gets on a bus and goes anywhere, they go voluntarily. They self-identify what city they want to go to. So New York is purposefully chosen by the migrants as a location to go to, point one. But point two, the only place that they are typically going to are cities that self-identify as sanctuary cities, which may be one of the reasons why some of the migrants choose to go there.
Abbott has stated that migrants voluntarily choose their destinations, often selecting major cities like New York and Chicago, where they may have family connections or believe opportunities are greater. Critics have accused Abbott of using migrants as political pawns, but supporters argue he is simply exposing the consequences of sanctuary city policies to communities that previously felt insulated from the border crisis.
They are given an option about anywhere they want to go, and the number one choice of where they wanted to go was New York City.
So they're not given a list of 7, 8 cities?
They're not given specific lists. They were given opportunities. Tell us where you want to go. And they choose New York, Chicago, and other large cities that they've heard of before or they may have family contacts in.
The busing program has created significant tensions between Texas and the receiving cities. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson publicly condemned Abbott's tactics, calling them an attack on our country. New York and other cities have struggled to accommodate the sudden influx of migrants, with some declaring states of emergency and pleading for federal assistance. In 2025, Texas's approach has evolved significantly with the arrival of a new federal administration. Operation Lone Star has transformed into what officials call Operation Lone Star 2.0, focusing heavily on interior enforcement and direct partnership with federal immigration authorities. Governor Abbott has positioned Texas as a testing ground for aggressive federal immigration policies. This new phase includes collaboration with governors from other states, including Missouri, Nebraska, Tennessee, and Virginia, for joint operations. State officials claim November 2025 saw the lowest illegal crossings this century. The operational scale of Texas's border response is staggering. DPS tactical teams conduct daily arrests, smuggling interdictions, and cartel tracking operations. In one notable success, Texas forces collaborated with federal authorities to capture a Sinaloa cartel boss in November 2025. The state has established new forward operating bases along the border, some costing millions of dollars weekly to maintain. National Guard soldiers have been deputized with powers previously reserved for federal immigration officers, allowing them to make arrests and process detainees. Texas has also passed significant new legislation to expand state authority over immigration enforcement. House Bill 354 creates a Texas Border Protection Unit with authority to arrest illegal crossers and build barriers. Senate Bill 81 authorizes DPS to immediately return illegal crossers to Mexico and use force against suspected cartel operatives. Senate Bill 134 mandates all local law enforcement cooperate with ICE, effectively turning local police into immigration enforcement agents.
Between the state and the federal government.
The State Highway Patrol will now have some of the same authority as ICE.
Nearly 60% of Texas counties have now signed up for federal 2A7G partnerships that allow deputies to enforce immigration law. Roughly 3,500 Texas state highway patrolmen will soon have powers equivalent to federal immigration agents. Civil rights groups have raised concerns about potential racial profiling, while supporters argue these measures are essential for public safety.
So that means someone who's pulled over for speeding, or maybe even because they have toll bills on their account, they could get pulled over and racially profiled.
The Texas House passed Senate Bill 8, requiring sheriff's offices to work with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The bill passed with an 89-50 vote despite heavy opposition from demonstrators who warned it would create a chilling effect throughout the state.
While I'm going to accept that this bill is probably going to pass today, I'm not going to accept the chilling effect that's going to be created throughout this entire state of Texas.
Abbott's physical deterrence measures have been equally aggressive. Texas continues installing razor wire, building border walls, and deploying marine buoys in the Rio Grande. These barriers have generated significant controversy, particularly after a migrant drowning incident in January 2024, where state barriers allegedly prevented Border Patrol from conducting a rescue operation. The incident sparked a federal lawsuit, with the Biden administration arguing that Texas was interfering with federal border enforcement responsibilities. Abbott defended the barriers, controversially claiming that the migrant family was already dead when discovered. The legal battles between Texas and the federal government have escalated throughout the crisis. Texas has challenged federal authority to remove state-installed barriers, arguing that the state has constitutional authority to defend itself against what Abbott characterizes as an invasion. Federal courts have issued mixed rulings, creating ongoing uncertainty about the limits of state power in immigration enforcement. The Supreme Court has been asked to weigh in on several aspects of the dispute, with decisions expected to have lasting implications for federal-state relations on border issues. In one particularly controversial moment, Abbott defended Texas's use of barriers by stating that the state isn't shooting migrants crossing illegally because all we would be charged with is murder. The comment drew widespread condemnation from critics who called it callous and inhumane, while Abbott maintained that his policies are designed to protect Texas communities from what he considers an uncontrolled invasion. The economic and political fallout. The migrant crisis has created complex and often contradictory economic impacts across Texas. On one hand, immigrants, including undocumented workers, contribute significantly to the state's economy. They comprise 23% of Texas's labor force, totaling over 3.7 million workers, who contribute an estimated $192 billion in annual personal income. In border communities like El Paso, immigrants earned $4.8 billion in 2019, leaving $3.8 billion in local spending that sustains small businesses and economic corridors. Undocumented and temporarily protected workers pay over $10 billion annually in federal, state, and local taxes. They are 160% more likely to start businesses than U.S.-born residents in border areas like Brownsville. In Laredo and Brownsville, immigrants represent over 53% of business owners, driving growth in construction, retail, and transportation sectors. However, the economic picture has become more complicated under aggressive enforcement policies. Texas job growth has dipped below its historical 2% trend. About 20% of Texas businesses report negative impacts on hiring and retention, with 13% already experiencing workforce difficulties. Some companies have responded by increasing hours for existing staff or considering outsourcing and offshoring operations. The construction industry, where immigrants comprise 40% of the workforce, faces particular challenges. Agriculture, with 54% of workers being undocumented or temporarily protected, is highly exposed to enforcement actions. Hospitality businesses struggle to fill roles in housekeeping and food service. The overall productivity drag from enforcement measures is estimated at approximately 1%. These labor shortages have ripple effects throughout the economy. Construction projects face delays, Agricultural goods spoil in fields due to lack of harvesters, and restaurants reduce hours of operation due to understaffing. The demographic reality of Texas's workforce makes immigration policy particularly consequential. With an aging native-born population, Texas increasingly depends on immigrant labor to fill essential roles. In the Middle Rio Grande Valley, immigrants comprise 38% of manufacturing workers and 34.7% of healthcare and social assistance positions. In Laredo, over half of all entrepreneurs are immigrants. Removing this labor force without replacement would create severe economic disruption that could take years to address through domestic workforce development. Economists have modeled potential mass deportation scenarios, projecting that removing 50% of unauthorized workers could cause native real wages to fall 0.5% in Texas. Consumer prices could rise 0.3% higher in Texas than the national average due to its high unauthorized worker share. These impacts would be slightly regressive, hitting lower-income households harder. Operation Lone Star's $11 billion price tag has also drawn scrutiny. Critics argue these funds have been diverted from healthcare, education, and other essential services. The federal response has shifted dramatically with the new administration. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced aggressive deportation targets and claimed significant progress in border security.
We're removing illegal aliens who came in under the Biden administration. By the end of this year, 2.5 million illegal aliens will have left our country. From January to November of this year, ICE alone arrested and removed over 1,100 known or suspected terrorists that were on our terrorist watch list.
The administration claims border crossings have dropped over 93% year over year, calling it the most secure border in American history. Federal officials report 7 consecutive months of zero illegal aliens released into the streets. They attribute this to a combination of physical barriers, enforcement actions, and diplomatic pressure on transit countries.
President Trump has put an end to that, delivering the most secure border in American history. In fact, we've just reached our 7th month of zero illegal aliens released into our streets. Border crossings are down over 93% year over year. Meanwhile, we're removing illegal aliens who came in under the Biden administration. By the end of this year, 2.5 million illegal aliens will have left our country.
The federal partnership has also resulted in significant drug interdiction successes. Officials report fentanyl traffic across the southern border is down 56%, and task forces have seized over 461 metric tons of drugs. In one operation, CBP stopped nearly 6,000 pounds of methamphetamine at a San Diego port of entry. However, the humanitarian concerns remain significant. Migrants continue to face severe risks, including razor wire injuries, drownings from river buoys, and exploitation by cartels charging $8,000 to $15,000 for passage. Over 1,000 cases of exploitation were documented between January 2024 and May 2025. Reports have emerged of abuse at Texas ICE facilities, and at least 10 National Guard members deployed to the border have died, including several by suicide. The mental health toll on both migrants and those tasked with processing them has been profound, with advocates warning of a developing humanitarian crisis within the crisis. Children have been particularly affected by the enforcement measures. Unaccompanied minors, who made up nearly 10% of apprehensions in 2025, face extended detention and separation from family members. Child welfare advocates have documented cases of long-term psychological trauma resulting from enforcement encounters. The tension between enforcement objectives and child welfare obligations has created difficult ethical questions for officials at every level of government. Looking forward, experts have proposed various solutions to address the crisis sustainably. Recommendations include expanding legal pathways, such as work visas tied to labor market needs, implementing mandatory e-verify systems for employers, and providing foreign aid to address root causes of migration in origin countries. Some economists argue that legalizing current workers could add $5.3 billion in annual Texas taxes while filling critical workforce gaps. Others suggest redirecting Operation Lone Star funds toward community infrastructure and reparations for communities most affected by the crisis. International cooperation will be essential to any long-term solution. The root causes of migration, violence, poverty, climate change, and political instability in origin countries cannot be addressed through border enforcement alone. Diplomatic efforts to improve conditions in Central America, Venezuela, and other source countries could reduce migration pressure over time. Similarly, agreements with Mexico and other transit countries to better manage migration flows have shown promise when properly implemented and resourced. The political implications of the crisis continue to reverberate. Texas's aggressive stance has made immigration a defining issue, with Governor Abbott positioning himself as a champion of border security. The busing program, while controversial, successfully forced national attention on border communities and created political pressure on sanctuary cities. Abbott's approach has become a model for other Republican governors seeking to address immigration concerns at the state level. The crisis has also reshaped political dynamics within Texas. Latino communities in border regions, once reliably Democratic, have shown increasing support for enforcement measures. Local officials who initially supported migrant aid NGOs have faced backlash from constituents overwhelmed by the scale of arrivals. The political landscape has become more complex than simple partisan divisions would suggest, with practical concerns about community resources often trumping ideological positions on immigration. As of December 2025, the situation remains fluid. Border crossings have dropped significantly from their 2023-2024 peaks, the lowest since 1970 according to CBP data, but interior enforcement has intensified. Texas DPS has assisted in over 3,000 arrests of undocumented immigrants statewide, leading to actions by ICE. The state continues to expand its border infrastructure and deepen its partnership with federal authorities. New forward operating bases have been established, and technology investments continue with AI-enabled surveillance systems and enhanced biometric tracking capabilities. The story of Texas and the migrant crisis is ultimately a story of a state caught between competing pressures: the economic benefits of immigrant labor, the humanitarian needs of desperate people seeking better lives, the security concerns of border communities, and the political imperatives of enforcing national sovereignty. Governor Abbott's meltdown may be less about personal frustration than about the impossible choices facing any leader confronting a crisis of this magnitude. The decisions made today will shape Texas and America for generations to come, affecting communities, families, and the fundamental character of the nation. What comes next will depend on whether leaders can move beyond finger-pointing to find sustainable solutions, or whether Texas and other border states will continue bearing the burden of a crisis that ultimately requires national and international cooperation to resolve. Outro. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories shaping America. Thanks for watching.